The walls started closing in on Conn following the 2013 Senate hearing, but he continued practicing law and making his millions. In 2016, as the indictment loomed, it looked like the story was over. The flamboyant lawyer from Stanville, Kentucky had built a fortune out of a scheme that defrauded the Social Security Administration of more than $500 million. In 2017, he stood in federal court, convicted and awaiting sentencing. But Eric Conn wasn't ready to accept his fate.
Instead, he would orchestrate one of the most audacious escapes in Kentucky history, vanishing across the border, living life as a fugitive, and landing himself on the FBI's most wanted list. Welcome to Kentucky Case Files, a true crime podcast that explores the dark, complex, and often haunting crimes of the Bluegrass State. I'm Emily Steele.
And I'm Marcus Roland.
This is the Eric C. Conn Case, Part 3, Catch Me If You Conn.
In April of 2016, a federal grand jury finally unsealed indictments against Eric C. Conn, along with Judge David Daugherty and psychologist Alfred Adkins. The charges laid bare one of the largest Social Security fraud schemes in American history. By early 2017, Conn's empire had collapsed. The government had shut down his law practice, and investigators had spent years unraveling the web of bribes and fake medical reports. He then found himself standing before a federal judge, admitting what so many already suspected. He pled guilty to stealing government funds and bribing a judge to rubber stamp thousands of disability cases. For that, he faced up to 12 years in prison and over $500 million in restitution. Conn officially pleaded guilty to 2 felony counts: theft of government money and paying illegal gratuities to Judge David Daugherty. He admitted to bribing the judge to approve thousands of disability claims, lining his own pockets with fees.
The plea deal capped his potential sentence at 12 years, but for Conn, prison of any length was unthinkable. He later said he was afraid he would be sexually assaulted. He had lived like a king, traveling and partying in exotic locales around the world, collecting luxury cars and building roadside monuments to himself. Now he was about to trade all of that for a tiny prison cell. But Conn wasn't the type to go quietly or without a theatrical flair.
After his conviction, Conn was out on bond while awaiting sentencing. He had driven to Lexington to help with testimony he was scheduled to deliver at the trial of Dr. Alfred Adkins, the psychologist he used to support his disability cases. He wore an ankle monitor and had surrendered his passport, but prosecutors didn't realize he was already laying the groundwork for escape. I mean, really, had they met Eric C. Conn? On June 2nd, 2017, Conn cut off his electronic monitor, tossed it on the side of Interstate 75 near Lexington, and disappeared. Here is Amy Hess, the special agent in charge of the Louisville division of the FBI, shortly after Conn's escape.
He was scheduled to be sentenced next month, but instead, on Friday evening, he removed his GPS monitoring device, or his ankle bracelet, which was found along I-75 in Lexington. The next day, a warrant was issued for his arrest, and we began ardently looking for him, as we are today. We issued a press release initially, and today I'm announcing a $20,000 reward for his location that leads to his arrest, so that he can return to Kentucky and face justice.
Back in eastern Kentucky, people were stunned. Conn had been a household name there for decades. His billboards, his commercials, his Lincoln statue, and now he was a fugitive, with the FBI offering a $20,000 reward for his capture. Former Social Security employees Jennifer Griffith and Sarah Carver weren't ever informed Conn had escaped and were just told to seek out law enforcement officials if they felt threatened.
Hunt for Eric C. Conn became a national story, blending the absurd with the serious. Here was a small-town lawyer who had created a legal empire out of a series of double-wide trailers, and now he was at the center of a high-stakes international manhunt. Conn's escape route took him south through Mexico, and eventually, nearly 3,000 miles away by car, to the port city of La Ceiba, Honduras, on the Caribbean coast. He had shed weight, shaved his head, and tried to blend in to the beach towns of Central America. He bragged of using a puppy to con his way across the Mexican border. He even talked of finding love again, only this time he didn't have time to get married. Conn was Conn. He just couldn't resist drawing attention to himself.
What did he do? Absurdly, he contacted a reporter, Bill Estep, the Lexington Herald leader journalist who had covered him, to tell his side of the story and to goad the FBI. We asked Estep what it was like getting that first email from Conn.
I thought I was being punked, as the folks would say, pranked. I was sitting in the newsroom. It was a Friday afternoon. I remember it. And I was sitting in our newsroom in Lexington and I get this email out of the blue from somebody. And it's kind of cryptic, but there's enough information for me to understand it's somebody claiming to be Eric Conn. And he wants to tell me some stuff about the case. And he wants to tell me that the FBI can't catch him. And he was kind of mad. There was a former prosecutor who had made some statements about him. He was mad about that. I talked to my editor. We looked at it and we decided not to do anything because I couldn't confirm that it was him. So I worked again on Saturday. I reached out to some contacts I knew in the FBI. I reached out to Eric's defense lawyer who had also gotten an email and pretty kind of similar wording. And sources in the FBI told me that it seemed legit to them based on what little they knew at that point. And I also sent back an email to the address with some questions that I thought, maybe only Eric could know. I asked him about a couple of his wives, for instance. It was in the public court record. He'd been married more than a dozen times. But when I'd done the profile, I had information about I knew his social security number, I knew his number of marriages, all these sorts of things. So his prior addresses. I sent back to this email person. I sent back an email with some questions, frankly, to test his or her knowledge, and he got them all right. So I was satisfied at that point that it was Conn. So at that point, I think our first story would have appeared on Sunday then. So I got the email Friday and spent some time Friday, evening and all day Saturday checking it out.
The first email message complained that public officials were being treated more lightly by the justice system and laid out Conn's demands for surrender. He wanted the FBI to issue a public statement saying he fled because two judges who admitted misconduct in his case were facing shorter sentences than his own. And he also wanted a guarantee that he wouldn't face new charges for breaking home detention.
For those who knew him, it was typical Conn, a flashy stunt, a bid to stay in control, even an attempt to dictate how he'd turn himself in. As former employee Adam Murphy told the Herald leader, quote, "He likes to do things just to shock people. This sounds exactly like him." And Conn also took the opportunity to taunt. Here's Estep again.
And then we did publish a story Sunday. And then there was a series of other emails. And he ultimately also reached out. He sent emails I think he sent an email to the prosecutor, who was a special prosecutor from D.C., was with the office out of Lexington. And he faxed a couple of people too. He was not shy about reaching out to folks while he was, as it turned out. And one of the other interesting things though was I couldn't tell. Again, Eric, as I said, he loves to think that he's smarter than everybody. So the emails, all the original ones had false information. That one of the early ones I got, he recounted how he got out of the country, which, we made clear to stay in the stories, we can't verify this. And that was good because it ultimately turned out to be garbage. He said something about he flown to an airport in New York and had a fake passport and bought tickets to more than one place and ultimately got out of the country. When we know, ultimately, as the investigation developed, he ultimately pled guilty. He walked across the footbridge into Mexico. But I couldn't tell in those early emails, was he trying to throw the FBI off his tracks? Or was he just, pranking us, messing with us by sending me false information to see if I would print it without checking it or that sort of thing. So he was hard to figure out what his real purpose was.
Was the FBI breathing down your neck? during this period of time?
The FBI they were interested in what he had to say. I did talk with an agent who was a source of mine, but ultimately they caught him as the facts later developed. He had ultimately gone to Honduras and sent some innocuous email, and I don't know to who, saying he missed Italian food, and they knew where that originated from, the city. So I'd like, it's FBI 101. His time on the run didn't go very well. He was running out of money. He couldn't access the money he had. There were language barriers. There were political instabilities. He was crossing borders, and I think he finally either he laid down his guard, got tired, or just slipped up.
On December 2nd, 2017, after 194 days on the run, Conn's luck ran out. The FBI had traced him to a Pizza Hut in Honduras. He was arrested while eating a pepperoni personal pan pizza and a bowl of soup. Within days, he was back on U.S. soil and then escorted to Kentucky.
Here's WHAS reporting on Conn's capture.
From a Honduran Pizza Hut to a jail cell in Lexington, attorney Eric Conn is back in the Bluegrass tonight after being on the run.
For prosecutors, it was vindication. For Conn's victims, the thousands of clients whose disability benefits were thrown into question, it was a bittersweet moment. The fraudster had been captured, but they were still being treated like criminals by association.
For fleeing, Conn was sentenced to 15 years in prison, stacked on top of the 12 years from his original guilty plea. That brought his total to 27 years behind bars. And in federal court, there is no parole, except for the possibility of a 15% reduction in a sentence for good behavior.
The once flashy lawyer who made millions in the hollers of Appalachia would now spend decades in federal prison. Today, he's inmate 20834-032 at the Allenwood Federal Correctional Complex in Pennsylvania. His scheduled release is November 29, 2039. We reached out to Conn, but he did not immediately respond. Eric C. Conn thought he could outsmart the system, just like he had for years in the disability courts, but in the end, his ego and his need for attention brought him down. Still, Conn's capture didn't end the suffering for the thousands of men and women he left behind. Their benefits were suspended, their lives upended, and they would fight for years after his arrest. Oh, and the Kentucky Bar Association finally woke up and disbarred Conn. Just a decade late and $500 million short.
Next time, in part 4, we'll tell their story. The story of Conn's former clients, the lawyers who took up their fight, and the long shadows this scandal cast across Appalachia.
Sourcing for this podcast came from our independent reporting, the Lexington Herald-Leader, the Courier-Journal, the Wall Street Journal, the Associated Press, westvirginianews.blogspot.com, the Kentucky Law Journal, NPR, the documentary and podcast The Big Conn, U.S. Senate and OIG reports, 60 Minutes, WHAS, WLEX, and Mountaintop News.